What's up, everybody, and welcome back once again to the latest episode of the Taking the Pin podcast. Today, well, do we have a lot to talk about? Probably the biggest heel turn in God knows how long to talk about, as well as an excellent Elimination Chamber, as well as the usual weekly roundup, as well as lots of theories about WrestleMania, as well as how are you doing today, Bragster?
I was fine until the weekend.
Yeah.
And then John Cena broke my heart.
Yeah.
No, on serious terms, I'm actually good.
Mm.
I'm doing all well. The shock of Elimination Chamber is still lingering. How are you?
Yeah. Very, very well. But again, the first 24 hours of the Elimination Chamber aftermath, my head, I think there were many a time where my wife would be looking at me in the living room and I'd just be staring into the wall thinking, they actually did it. I can't believe it. So yeah, really enjoyed the Chamber PLE, as they call it now. I was about to call it pay-per-view, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
Honestly, it's so confusing with the PLE and pay-per-view stuff because
Yeah.
I obviously AEW correspondent here. They still call it pay-per-view.
Yeah.
So I go from AEW, which is Revolution pay-per-view, to WWE, which is Elimination Chamber PLE, and
Yeah. I know.
I'm like, can just the wrestling world just decide one and stick to one, and then I'm okay.
I know. It's mental, isn't it? Why I can't just have one simple name for things, I'll never know. But there we are. Such is the world of professional wrestling. Anyway, with that being said, introductions out the way, everyone's doing well. I think there is only one place to start on this week's podcast. The Trish and Tiffany tag team match. I think that's the way to go, isn't it? Yeah. No, we jest. Obviously, only place we can start. The one, the only. I would have said Mr. Loyalty, Hustle, and Respect, but I can't call him that anymore. It's
No.
Mr. John Cena and the shocking ending to the Elimination Chamber PLE. Just unbelievable scenes that I never thought I would ever see in my lifetime. And yeah, I don't even know where to start, Brexit. Like, how did it make you feel? As a great man once said.
I was on my own for the evening and not with like friends watching it, sort of thing. I ended up pretty much live tweeting the entire thing, the entire show as it went along, as some things were happening, and like I just remember and it was just one of those where it got to the end of the chamber match and he did it sort of nefariously, not in John Cena fashion where takes advantage of, someone getting involved. Usually you would have Cena, in that scenario, chase off Seth and then go back in the ring, and then there'd be maybe a bit more of a back and forth before Cena eventually wins type thing. But he fully took advantage. And at that point I was like, this Cena's taking this 17th title really seriously. Okay, cool. Then the ending happened and Cody said the F word unbleeped on WWE, which was a brilliant moment. Very underrated because it's not being spoken about because of what happened afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
I also believe that the impact of the heel turn wouldn't have been so big if they didn't make people believe that the big moment was the F-bomb.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that F-bomb makes you go, oh, that's so cool, blah, 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 that you forget there might be a plan B. And then there was a plan B.
Yeah.
And Cena just kicked him in the nuts, and my jaw just dropped. And it didn't lift up until 10 minutes after the show went off the air. I didn't touch my phone. I was just lay there, like meme, like looking face, like the screaming painting face.
Yeah.
I was making that. And then I just remember the show finishing and the Netflix logo coming on, it going shows ended, me turning off my TV because it's 3:30 in the morning, and I didn't move for 10 minutes. I didn't pick up my phone. I just didn't move. I didn't know what to do. It caught me so off guard that my jaw was on the floor from the moment it started to the moment it finished. And it possibly is the biggest heel turn in wrestling history. It's up there with Hogan, and then there's arguments to say it's bigger than Hogan. So, yeah, honestly have never experienced something like that in wrestling. Like, I've experienced moments where I'm surprised, but usually I'm surprised in a good way, like the Sammy turn where I'm like, that was so awesome, or you get that feeling, or the end of WrestleMania 40, and it's like, oh my god, what a match! Like, that was incredible, and you're sort of reeling off the end of it. And then you've got this, and it just this moment of just your heart sinking and then just not getting up off the floor. That was just completely foreign.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, in terms of... Yeah. So, going back to how the chamber ended, there was there was that moment where Punk's head gets rammed into the canvas, and then Cena is like, "Oh, okay," and scrambles and gets it. And yeah, there was a flicker in my head of, "Oh, okay, that's not usually like Cena." But then I sort of said to myself, "Well, think of how Rumble ended. He was so close. He's so close here. This is his opportunity to get there." And then you obviously then Seth screaming at Punk to die, and and it was already heightened up so much to that point in the match, and then Cena celebrating and jumping around, and then Cody comes out, and all this time I'm thinking, wow, it's Cena and Cody in the main event. It's Cena's last Mania main event, and that kept going through my head over and over and over again. And then when, like you say, when Cody tells him to go fuck himself, just unbelievable. Like, that made my jaw hit the floor the first time, because I was like, oh my god, like, it's an F-bomb.
Yeah.
Well and truly said in the middle of WWE programming. Like, probably haven't heard that for years. I can't remember the last time. But, and then I thought to myself, it was funny because I saw Cena jumping around and celebrating in the background, and I was like, oh, it's like a proud dad moment. Right?
Because I had the exact same kind of thought. I was like, oh, look at him. He's so happy for it. Like, his successor.
and I did. And I was like, this proper dad moment, happy dad moment. And then he's like, Rock's looking at him, and then he's looking at Cena, and Cena's looking at Cody, and I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And all thoughts of there has to be something else in my head had gone. Like, I don't understand how I dropped everything. There was this amazing suspension of disbelief that had left my mind, which isn't usually there. And I think in wrestling, when that goes and then the moment happens, that's what makes the best moments, when it's totally unexpected. And yeah, there's the odd people out there who've come out the woodwork saying they expected it, but 99% of people didn't expect Cena turning heel on the bingo card.
We all theorized it. At some point, everyone came up with the theory, what if?
Yeah, but it's what if, it's not a this is going to happen.
No,
it's
deep down, no one thought it was going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, you can say what if all you want, and we make 1,000,001 theories. We already have done on this podcast, and we've barely started. You make so many theories as a fan, and so many of them you laugh off. The amount of times I've sent voice notes to my friend Kai and we'll theorize something, and then we'll sit there and go, that's not going to happen, is it? And just laugh it off. And Cena turning heel was one of those in his last year, when he doesn't need to turn heel. That's the big one. Is Cena is at his last year of his entire WWE run, if it's his last year, because I have a thing on that. And it's his last year, and ultimately, he does not need to turn heel. He can go through his entire final run, done his greatest hits, which everyone was excited for him to do his greatest hits, and at some point along the road, he would win that world title. Whether it was at Mania through winning the Rumble like some people predicted, whether it was through the Elimination Chamber going to Mania like people predicted, whether it was through Money in the Bank like I predicted. And no matter what, all these people, even if it was his final show, which a lot of other people predicted would happen, and then he would relinquish the title, so many people thought all these different things and predicted all these different things because he didn't need to turn heel for all of that to happen. And yet he did. At the time, no one thought it would happen. If it was going to happen, the heel turn, it would have happened after a Money in the Bank win or something.
Yeah.
Like, no one saw him turning heel at Elimination Chamber, the pay-per-view before Mania, where he would face the biggest babyface in the company and stand opposite his counterpart. If anything, the more likely scenario of either of them two turning heel was Cody, because of all the relations to Homelander and that everyone sort of puts them two in the same pocket as, of people, and everyone fantasy books that heel turn. Then no one thinks of the opposite. And it just, it was perfection is the way I would describe. Well, it was near perfection.
I know what you're going to say.
I forgot about Travis Scott for a moment because I honestly think if the powers may be could possibly edit him out of the segment and just completely edit him out of any footage, please do for years to come, because
on Raw in some of the packages it was edited in such a way where you couldn't see him. I know, obviously.
I wonder why.
the aftermath of it. Obviously, when he attacks him and stuff, you can't edit that out.
No.
They're going to keep that in, and that's fair enough. But obviously, when he's standing in the corner with his sage, spraying that all over himself over and over again,
Yeah.
But I said it the other week when he was on Raw. I can't remember if it was the Raw for Netflix debut when he came out with Jey Uso, and he just didn't look interested. He just didn't look like he was even bothered, and. That's obviously, again, I'm ignoring anything to do with him in terms of that segment because it was brilliant. And again, watching it, and then when he hugs him, and then just seeing that camera shot of his face staring back at Rock, and I was like, I literally shouted out, "Oh my God!" at 3:30 in my living room in the middle of the morning. If neighbours had been awake, they'd have think something either was going really well for me or was going really badly for me. It was one of the two. So, it was just like a total shock. And then just the aftermath of him attacking Cody and this, that, and the other. And it is one of the biggest surprises we've ever had. It's, for me, because again, I was 4 years old when the Hogan turn happened, so I have no recollection of it. Wasn't even aware what a good guy and a bad guy was at 4 years old. So for me, it's going to be the biggest one that I probably will ever see because there is no bigger babyface in the history of wrestling than there is John Cena.
Yeah.
Because even you can name big superstars and bigger superstars than him, but they've all been bad guys at some point and they've all been good guys at some point. But no one has been a good guy as much as that guy. And it's like, when my wife watched it with me the next day, she was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe he's actually a bad guy now." And I was like, "I know, they've broken Superman." That was how I described it. They've broken Superman, and now we get to see what that looks like over the however many months he stays there. So, yeah, just an amazing, amazing moment. And I think it goes up there with, like you say, the past few years when we've had those moments like the Cody winning at 40, Sammy turning face and hitting Roman with the chair is another one where I think that's probably the closest one in comparison to how I like that shock of, because it was like Sammy stood behind Roman and then you think he's not going to do it, and then he does it and it's like, oh my God. And it's just that initial like moment. And the other thing I compared it to in terms of surprise to me was like when I watched Endgame in the cinema for the first time and Cap got the hammer and you saw the hammer move up. And I remember I was sat next to Laura and my wife and I grabbed her leg because I was in that much shock and surprise. And I was having such a nerd out. And she was just like, okay, this is obviously a big moment. He's enjoying this. Let him have his moment. So, and it was great. And honestly, well done. And we said last week, about that Rock and Cody segment initially, that whilst we didn't think it was a particularly good segment, it set things up.
Yeah.
But there had to be the payoff, and thank God it had this payoff, because it was worth it in the end to go through the initial segment.
100%. And there were, like, from reports that are coming out now, this has been the plan for way longer than we thought. And to be fair, we even mentioned last week that maybe this Rock return was maybe more plans than they're letting on, because there's been a lot of reports obviously last year the Rock came back and ruined everything. Well, nearly ruined everything, and then we got back on track. But it seemed like WWE, and especially in the Triple H era, and they've done very well of this recently, of playing on the dirt sheets and playing on, stuff like that, by number one saying that Drew McIntyre was going to win the whole thing and releasing that as a genuine leak, but on purpose, and then eliminating him first in the chamber was really, really funny. So then, you've got that, and then you've got the fact that, like, they've played on the fact that we all gone, oh, the Rock's come back and he's ruining everything again. They wanted you to believe that. And the fact that this has been the plan for what, they knew how people would react if they just didn't announce the Rock coming back, suddenly announced it, everything then changes. They know how we're all going to react, and it's paid off. They've hinted at this so many times. Number one, you've got the watch, where, is the first obvious thing of the Rock basically gifts it and goes, don't break my heart again. Otherwise, I'll basically murder you. Breaks his heart. The watch is then used to then, attack Cody. You then got the fact that, during this entire John Cena run, retirement tour, split up twice. You then got the fact that he loses at the Rumble and immediately announced at the Elimination that he was going to appear at the Elimination Chamber, and said the words, "It's best for business," and we all went, nah, and just ignored it. You've then got the fact that CM Punk hinted in one of his promos. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't believe Punk probably knew about it, and if he did, brilliant to tease it in his promo with Cody all that while ago, going, no one is Superman. Like, and name, no one is Superman, but who was the person everyone thought of that's like, Billy is Superman? Is Cena. But now we've been proven that Punk was right this whole time. No one is Superman. Everyone has their breaking point. And, and you've then got just everything falling into play. You've got the bloody poster that was announced that had Cena, The Rock, and Travis Scott stood side by bloody side, literally announced on like the day before, and everyone went, that's weird to change the the poster to that, but fine. Out, and then we see what happened. There was just hint after hint after hint after hint, and we, as naive wrestling fans, went, nah. But that just shows why this is so big, is because there's no, it will never happen again, because no one in the wrestling world would ever be able to pull off staying a babyface for that long and never turning, and the story never quite working where he has to turn, and him being able to get the crowd back on his side every goddamn time. Because in modern day wrestling, it doesn't work anymore. Your characters have to be way more layered than ever before for wrestling fans to invest in you, because wrestling fans are smarter than they are now. They also are open to the dirt sheets that we never were before. So therefore the wrestlers themselves have to be smarter, because they have to play off real life stuff that they never had to before. A character like John Cena and like Hulk Hogan, and obviously we all know that John Cena was made to be the next Hulk Hogan and then somehow surpassed that in how big he became, more because of the Make-A-Wish stuff and going on to Hollywood that Hulk Hogan never did.
Oh, that was another thing, actually, you just reminded me of.
Oh, yeah, the fact that he did the Make-A-Wish stuff on the same day that he
No. They filed a trademark.
Oh yeah.
They've filed a trademark called Break a Wish.
Which is genius.
Yeah.
Again, but and then you've got then the shout out to Chris Van Vliet, who has like decided to run with this because he mentioned this last year. He said The Rock is now heel. What if you had the situation where The Rock and Cena are heels at the same time? I genuinely believe, and this is just my personal opinion, if he hadn't asked that question, I'm not sure that would have this would have happened. Because I can guarantee you now, Cena's sat in that seat and gone, "Oh, that's a good idea," and that's probably what triggered a lot of this.
Maybe.
Is just that one simple journalistic question, and you know, Chris has shared that so many times. But in that same interview, John Cena mentions that if he was to turn heel, he's mentioned to the company before, he will stop the Make-A-Wishes. He will stop doing all of the promotion stuff that he does. If he's to be a heel, he will be a goddamn heel.
Yeah.
And it feels like we're already getting that, as you said, especially with that trademark and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, we will never experience this again. This will never happen again. It can't happen again because wrestling's too smart.
Yeah, you've got to, if we're going to get anywhere near it again, Cody's going to have to go through 10, 15 years of being a good guy and not having any turns whatsoever. Like, that's the scale I think we're at now. Like, you're going to have like a run of unbelievable proportions as a babyface to get anywhere close to it. And I don't think Cody will get to that. If he does, he's done well because he's somehow managed to keep favor with the crowd when usually if you're a on top babyface for too long, they start to turn. And I feel like that, not that they were turning, but you could feel the sort of air start to turn a little bit with Cody. And I think this has just jolted that right back. It's just revitalized that so much.
That's what makes this even more genius. Is because if they've known this for so long, putting Cody through this entire storyline with Kevin, where Kevin's been right this whole time, aka like you're watching Cody think about his decisions and contemplate the fact that he's a face and whether he's right and whether he's wrong. You see Cody going through all this turbulence over the last few months that then leads to this, that then makes this a bigger moment. Like, the fact that they've known about this for so long just shows all the genius decisions they made along the way. As you said, it's completely thrown people off. You know, Cody would have to last another 10, 15 years as a babyface to last this long. Now, Cody has mentioned on multiple occasions, he is never turning heel. He has said that on many occasions in interviews, both when he was in AEW and in WWE, I will never turn heel. Do I believe that's going to happen? As you said, no. But he said he won't. So, you know, maybe Cody is that next one. And he proves me completely wrong and I'm a complete idiot. And in 10, 15 years' time, people throw this clip right in my face where I said it will never happen again. But I just think it will be too tantalizing that at some point they're going to want to do it. Both parties are good at some point are going to want to do it when the story is right. And in 10, 15 years, that story is going to be right at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just genius. The entire thing is just genius. And you could say what you want about Triple H's booking. I know a lot of people don't like it. I've always been a fan. But you can say what you want about Triple H's booking. But ever since he's taken charge, he's given us some of the biggest moments we will ever have as a wrestling fan. And when you think back to big moments in wrestling, you can name multiple that Triple H has given us already in its short tenure. And he just does it year on year on year. And it's brilliant. He gave it to us in 2023 with Sammy. He's given it us in 2024 with the whole Rock Cody thing and then Cody winning at Mania. He's now given us a big moment this year. Yeah. Every single year he gives us something, and you can say what you want about his booking, but every year he gives us one of the biggest moments in wrestling.
And there could be well more on the way with... I think someone said something that there's more twists and turns coming before we even get to Mania, so let's keep our eyes peeled on that one. I'm sure we'll know about them when they smack us right dab in the face out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, we'll leave it there for the heel turn, and we'll go into a bit of a chamber review. So, Elimination Chamber, again, for me, fantastic night watching that myself personally. But let's start from the very top. And again, we started off hot with the Women's Elimination Chamber, and before the chamber even started, we had the return of one Jade Cargill, who, again, everyone had been wondering, where's Jade been? She's been out for a while. When's she coming back? Some people had said she'll appear before Mania. Some people said it'll be the Raw or Smackdown after Mania. Some people said we might never see her again. There was probably two people in the entire world that actually thought that, but there will be someone out there who thought it. And, I mean, what a return. You come back and she seems to have attacked the person that took her out. Obviously, we'll see in the long term if that ends up being the way it plays out. But obviously she came back and went to attack Liv, who was cowering away, and then suddenly turned on her once friend Naomi and basically slammed the door on her head and knocked out Naomi from the Elimination Chamber match.
I will like this. This was how you do a brutal heel turn. Sorry, not a heel turn, but a brutal like turn. Because it is. We all know it's just like soft heel turn for Naomi because we all know what it means. And it's a great return and a great attack, and it was brutal, absolutely brutal. Like we've seen stuff like this with the Chamber before. My mind harkens back to Bobby Lashley, especially. But then even before that, you've got Edge attacking Kofi Kingston before the Chamber match there. And I think this was the moment possibly was better for Edge's because of the surprise of him then entering. But I think in terms of like the execution of the actual attack itself, this was the best one I've ever seen in terms of a Chamber attack because it was brutal, using every aspect of the Chamber, using the chains on the outside, using the floor on the outside, using the pod, then using the door, which I've never seen as an attack, especially in that brutal fashion.
Yeah.
And then obviously Naomi getting taken out completely out of the match. The only thing I have to say on it that's a negative is I really dislike people getting taken out of no DQ matches for being unable to compete. The whole point of these matches is it's supposed to be dangerous.
Yeah.
So the only thing I possibly would have changed would have been Jade, like after the slamming of the door, even just as simple as picking up the dead weight of Naomi, and like would have been again like way you could have put it across was almost like her almost dragging her up like one-handed type thing to show Jade's power and just throwing her back in the ring. So then Liv picks up the 1, 2, 3 on Naomi, and it's a very really good because Liv can play off of that as a heel of I pin Naomi, and it's like, well, you did Jack. And also would then bring up the statistics for Liv as well in terms of eliminations in the Chamber. And would have annoyed me less because I don't like people getting taken out of. It's like when people get taken out of Hell in a Cell matches and something. It's like, well, the whole point of the match is that it's dangerous. But the fact that I only thought of that after when the show had been done and like I had a moment to think about the show. Yeah. But the moment in itself, live. No problems. It was brilliant. It was such a good moment. As you said, a really good way of starting off the pay-per-view, really hot, because that crowd from that point onwards did not shut up. Yeah. Like, from that point all the way to the end, did not be quiet. They were loud. They were so good. I feel like the Toronto crowd will not get enough credit for how good they were and how much they made this pay-per-view as good as it was.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah, really good start to the match and the pay-per-view.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I think the match itself was great as well. Again, so many spots you could talk about, so many moments. Again, another thing that beginning did for me personally, it probably didn't do it for everybody else, but Bianca's reaction when she's in the pod and she's like totally distraught, which she would be because your best pal's getting taken out by your other best pal, and you're thinking, what the hell's going on here? It made me think, oh, is maybe Bianca not winning then? Is this
No.
creating the turmoil in her head where it again gave the element of surprise towards the end of,
Yeah.
well, who's going to win? But again, I think overall the match was great. I think everyone played their part really well. I think, Liv once again is the MVP of the women's division at the minute and has been for a very long time. As much as Rhea obviously gets a lot of the attention, I think Liv is very much someone that should be up there in terms of praise. Because again, I think if not for Liv, I think that women's division would have suffered whilst Rhea was out injured. So, Liv being as great as she is, and then everybody else had their part to play. It's like Bianca was great, as she always is. Bayley had her moments. Roxanne was great as well. Her ascent up into the upper legions of the women's ranks continues, and will be very interesting to see what happens with her in Mania, because I think she'll have a pretty big spot there as well. She's earned it, really, with how she started out.
Yeah.
And then Alexa Bliss coming out and having that crowd reaction, and everyone sort of was behind Alexa to win it at one point, and that's the way it looked like it was going. And again, if she had won, again, anybody in that match could have won, and I don't think I would have been unhappy.
Bar one person, probably, and she got taken out in the first minute.
Yeah. I mean, I think, with the aftermath that could have been, I think you could have made it so it would have made sense. Like,
I think it just for me in terms of like hype for a Mania match. I feel like, and this is no snide on Naomi. It's just in terms of the booking and the position on the card. It's like Naomi's kind of been storyline wise Bianca's like lackey and like sidekick this entire time. That now we're finding out that she could potentially be an evil mastermind, and that's where that then makes like, if we'd gone into that chamber after the reveal, maybe it would have been a bit different going into that, because I think Naomi going into that chamber as a heel would have then been like, well, the intrigue of that versus Rhea would have then been a lot more tantalizing. But as we know, it was the burner until she then turns heel. But
we'll find out if she does, though, because again, I think the way they've done it leaves it open to interpretation of, is it going to be Naomi, or is Naomi going to be the fall guy and it actually turned out to be Bianca? I think there's every chance it could be that.
You could do that, or you could do that it was Naomi, but at the orders of Bianca, and that then gets revealed. But yeah, as you said, there's a lot more, I think, to come out in that story. Of how that comes about. But as you said, for the rest of them, it got to the point where I was just sat there after, and they were all in the ring. Obviously by Naomi, but they were all in the ring, and I just sat there and I was like, yeah, I'm just going to enjoy this. Like, it was, this is why stacking the chamber is such a good idea, and it's annoyed us for years that they don't, is because the best chambers of the past were stacked chambers, and you had those moments where you were watching it, not necessarily caring who won, you were just enjoying the match. There was no fear of, oh God, if this person wins. And having that gone and just being able to enjoy and watch these women just tear the house down to begin this pay-per-view was just a joy to watch.
Absolutely. And again, with obviously Bianca winning, we'll see obviously how that develops, because now we know that one of her definite opponent will be one EO. We'll see if there's another equation that gets added to it later, but we'll get into that in a bit.
I can't believe we'll get to that later, but I ended up tweeting and even messaging you, being at the end of this match, Bianca goes to the stage, Rhea comes out, and an EO comes out in the middle of them, which I thought was interesting positioning. Again, this is probably my producer side of me coming out, but it's interesting camera angle and positioning, when it would have made way more sense at the time to have had Bianca on one side and Io and Rhea standing next to each other facing Bianca. So you have that visual of it's Bianca or this. The fact that you had Io in the middle, I was like, ooh, that triple threat tantalizes me. I really like the idea of that triple threat because the crowd are so hot on Io that rather than being the third wheel, which she could have potentially been,
Yeah.
the crowd being so hot on her,
Mm-hmm.
it would have just elevated that match where you've got the obvious crowd favorite, you've got the big boss of the women's division in Rhea, and you've got Bianca, who obviously going through the chamber and all of this, is the big challenger going
Mm-hmm.
in, and potentially a heel at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I even messaged you, being like, that really intrigues me. I don't think they're going to do it, but it really intrigues me. Now I think they're going to do it, as we'll touch on later in more detail. But interesting visual at the end that then they seem to have capitalized on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and again, I think whatever match it is, whether it's just Io and Bianca or if it is a triple threat or there's some more shenanigans that happen between now and Mania, we'll have to wait and see. But very excited to see how that title match gets shaped. So yeah, again, like we said, a great women's elimination chamber match, and then we moved on from there to Trish and Tiff versus Nia and Candice, which again, I think a lot of people would have probably penciled in as a water break or as in go get snacks or go to a toilet break sort of match. But in all honesty, I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was a
It was a lot of fun.
nice fun match to fill in the middle. You know when things get put in between and it's going to be a filler. This was obviously meant to be a bit of a cool down after the women's chamber start, which was obviously red hot to start off the show. But I think it carried the momentum. I don't, because sometimes I do worry about those what are supposed to be filler matches that they can sort of take the air out the place a little bit. I don't think that did this at all. I think it was a really good showing from all four of them, really.
Yeah, I also think it's really clever use of a hometown crowd. It's okay. Yes, it's a filler match, but because you've got the hometown hero and Trish there, it therefore means that the crowd are going to care because it's their person. It'd be like for us in the UK, the filler match involving Drew. We're going to care because it's Drew. Or if it's Sheamus, we're going to care because it's Sheamus. Do you get what like?
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah,
And it's like so ultimately, yes, okay, it was a filler match, but it always had that elevated thing of, but it's her hometown. So that crowd cared, and this is what again where the crowd played their part is because the crowd cared about this match. It made you at home care about this match, and then we could get into it a lot more. And these are four great wrestlers. Obviously, we all know Nia's improved massively and deserves a lot of credit for how much she's improved from way back when, before she got released and stuff, and now has come back. It was also a really good showing for Candice, who I felt, I felt for a long time has been underutilized.
Yep.
Even in her NXT days, I always felt that her and Tegan Nox never quite got their moment.
Yeah.
Despite Candice, I can't remember what match it was, but she had this no DQ match in NXT that was just unreal and completely blew me away. And yeah, it was really nice to see her, get a moment to shine in the ring with three of the biggest names in the women's division right now. And Candice did not look out of place.
No.
At all, which was brilliant. And a really nice moment for Trish. Lovely to see her in the ring again. Like, it's amazing that she just hasn't lost a beat.
No, she hasn't. She really hasn't.
And then you've got Tiffany being Tiffany and just being her brilliant stuff. So you've got this lovely concoction of a match that just meant that you could just sit there and enjoy it. And as you said, it didn't take the momentum away. It just kept it simmering. So then when we got to the next match, the crowd were ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was, and again, like I say, it was a great match to continue the momentum of the show, and all four women deserve the props for a good tag team match. And then next up, you had the unsanctioned match between Sammy and KO. And again, my expectations were high for this match, and they got completely blown out of the water by the end of the match. Like, I if there was a match I went in being like, there's no way this is going to be a failure. There's no way this can flop. It was this one.
Mm-hmm.
Chamber matches can go wrong just from the simplest of things. So
Yeah.
anytime there's a chamber match, there's always that bit of risk of
Mm-hmm.
someone gets hurt, something happens that isn't supposed to happen, and it kind of derails it all. Fortunately, neither of those matches had any moments like that.
Mm-hmm.
But Sami and KO was the match where I was kind of like, if we're going to get an absolute banger of a match from anywhere on this pay-per-view with 100% certainty, it was this one.
Mm-hmm.
And they both played their roles to perfection. And I have never felt more... I can't even think of the word. I can't think more devastated or more, please someone stop this, when KO was about to... when he was ripping the mat up at the end and he's going to pile drive Sammy, and I'm thinking, oh God, please no, like let it be over. Like, let's just walk away from this now.
Mm-hmm.
Sammy's a crumpled heap of a mess. I mean, they were both messed up from it, as you would be, because it was such a brutal match. I mean, even at the beginning when they're going for Hail Marys on each other, going through the crowd, going through tables, barbed wire chairs, like, you know, just, it was an excellent match all around, wasn't it?
But for me, it wouldn't surprise me if for right now it's my match of the year. Won't surprise me if at the end of the year it still is. This was phenomenal. This is what I love about wrestling, because people would look at this and go, "Oh, it's the unsanctioned match. Oh, the barbed wire table, like, and all of the." It's not just that. The story of this match was incredible. Watching the demolition of Sammy, who was going into this already hurt, and just seeing Sammy go full gung-ho at the start and putting KO through 2 tables very early on. And the moment he went through the first one, I was like, they're starting off hot. Immediately puts him through another one, and I'm like, oh, they ain't messing around. Okay, cool. And the entire thing being like, Sammy starts off hot and then KO gets advantage, and that's it. Like, you're just watching Sammy get beaten up over and over again with these odd flurries, and the moment that barbed wire chair comes out, I'm like, holy crap, like, this is so not WWE, that it stood out so much. And this is part of the reason why I loved NXT so much, was because of how different it felt, and why AEW at its best feels so good is because of those moments that you don't usually get, or you're not used to as a wrestling fan. And this match made me wince so many times.
Yep.
And like, it was just the fact of like Sammy's selling, and like him trying to get feeling back into his arms, and all these subtleties that were going through it, where you could just see that Sammy's just almost got nothing left, and KO's just like stalking him this whole time. And it felt like the result was inevitable, that KO was going to win. And then they did it. They just had KO win. And I was like, that is how you do it. That's like such a clever way of booking the match, was just having, and even me, who predicted KO to win, like, did not see the match being booked the way it was, which was Sammy going gung-ho, and the moment he got hit, that was it. And it was just like stalking of prey, bar a couple of flurries.
Yeah.
And it just made you feel sorry for Sammy, made you want KO to stop. But the moment then Sammy got on top, you no longer wanted it to stop. You wanted him to fully take out the man.
Yeah.
And it went on and on and on, and not in a dragged out way, but in just a perfect, brilliant way. This match of the year for me, and it wouldn't surprise me if it is at the end. This was my favorite Owen Zayn match that I've seen. Absolutely sublime.
Yeah, definitely 5 stars out of 5, I think, if it was on a rating scale of ours, if we ever did one. But yeah, and then of course, why he couldn't have turned up 5 minutes early for me, I don't know. But then we had we only had the return of Randall Keith Orton. You know what I mean? Like, again, he's another one
spoken about.
I know.
Poor Randy.
I know, but then like he used another one, like Jade. He was another one. Who was like, when are we going to see Randy again? Like, we should see him here. We should see him there. Are we going to see him before or after Mania? Does he take a bit of an extended break? Like, what's the situation with Randy? And I think everyone felt like this was the time he was going to come back, and he ended up doing it. I would have liked it if it was 10 minutes earlier to give Sammy a helping hand, personally, but that's just me. And again, we know now that this is probably KO and Orton for Mania, and what a build that's going to be. And again, just the tease of Orton going for the punt was like, oh, he means business here.
Yeah.
And that already sets up the lights the fumes, or lights the torch paper, I should say, for the feud to start and get going already. But once again, Orton returns, and there are much bigger moments on the show that overshadow it. It's just crazy.
It reminds me so much of Punk returning, where you just got Autumn returns, and everyone's like, yay! and then you just, no one's speaking about it afterwards because there's just so many other great things on the show. But the tease for the punt is the big one for me. I think that massively teases what will happen at Mania. I think we're going to have a match where it should be the RKO versus the Stunner. It's not. It's going to be the package pile driver versus the punt.
Yeah.
Who gets it first is who wins.
Yeah.
And it's such clever storytelling in the sense of like these two have got their super finishers and they hate each other that much. They're will not win unless they hit their super finisher.
Yeah.
And it's a really clever way, actually, of no matter who loses, they're not going to look weak either because they've been hit with the super finisher. So, I mean, sorry, KO, you're losing, mate. But, it's one of those where you're going into it. The outcome is probably predictable, but you've got this really exciting prospect of a match that no one's going to care who is supposed to win because they're going to make you believe otherwise during that match, and you know it, so you're going to enjoy it. But yeah, the pump was the big one where I was like, okay, this is not only just a return, they set something up as well to go past that. They're making you ask questions, which makes you want to watch the weekly shows in the build up to Mania.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, very glad to see Randy back, and we'll see what this build looks like, because I think it'll be phenomenal. Promo battles, taking each other out, whatever it is, the build for it will be fantastic, I imagine. And then there was, last but not least, the men's Elimination Chamber match, which had a lot going into it in terms of build, hype, stacked card in terms of the people that are in it, and another one that I don't think disappointed. I think it built very nicely from the shock of Drew's roll-up, which really, in hindsight, based on his recent history, probably not the biggest shock that it was a roll-up that got him out. No. But again, Drew going out and then him taking out Damian and then being left with Logan, Seth, Cena, and Punk, and then Logan obviously getting his comeuppance with a cheeky slap before a GTS from Punk. And then that final three, just like poetry in motion. The tease of Cena and Punk having their little backwards and forwards, and then Seth getting involved, and then Cena and Punk then facing on Seth, and Seth's like, "Hey, hang on a second, like, what's going on here? What are you doing?" And then Seth stopping Punk at every moment that he possibly could, and interrupting him and Cena having their little come back together, and then Cena and Punk shouting, "I missed you" at each other, and then hugging each other, and then getting down to business, and then Seth getting eliminated, and it was just from top to bottom. I think it was a brilliant Elimination Chamber match, and I think both of the Chamber matches are up there in terms of being one of the best that we've seen. Again, for some reason, I don't tend to remember a lot of Chamber matches. I probably need to go watch a couple and remind myself of some of the better ones.
I honestly think a big reason for that, and I can't remember whether it was the best Chamber match or the worst Chamber match TLC on Wrestle Talk, that happened. But on one of them, they describe it as you've got some really, really good ones, you've got some really bad ones, and so many mid ones that just no one remembers. You've got like 4 or 5 at the top, 4 or 5 at the bottom, and every other chamber match that's ever happened all blur into one because nothing really happens in them. So then to have these two that will stand out when we look back at them because they had moments, they had those moments. And again, it goes back to the point I made earlier. This is what happens when you stack the chambers. This is what the whole, if you were harking all the way back to when the chambers first started, the whole point was that they were 6 of the biggest stars in the company and needed to settle their differences, and they couldn't in any other way. Eric Bischoff couldn't think of any other way than to just shove them all in the most dangerous structure he's ever constructed and let them fight it out. That then lost its meaning as time went on. Like initially, for the first few years, they kept that. We'll ignore December to December. But you know, for the first few years, they kept that, and then it sort of lost its meaning in the 2010s, and it feels like this. Like the last one I can probably remember spots in, you're probably looking at Bray's Chamber where he won it, or the women's tag one. And a big reason for that is because it was the inaugural women's tag team title match. So you know, those are probably the last two I properly remember. You know, in a positive light. So it for me, it's one of those where, like, I'm going to look back on these two and enjoy both of them. And my first thought after the women's was, that's going to be one I probably watch again at some point. Like, you know, when we're in the run up to a chamber pay-per-view, like we all do as wrestling fans, watch some of our favorites. I'm probably going to think of this pay-per-view and go, yeah, I'll watch both of those actually. So, you know, it does the job. And this is what happens when you start those matches.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I think the men's match built up really nicely as well throughout the entirety of it. And then it's just that I think the history of the 3 remaining is really what sold it for me, because obviously Cena and Punk and Rollins, and then even Cena and Rollins have their history as well. Like everything going into it kind of, and again, it was another thing of any one of these could win and it would make sense. And you didn't know which way it was going to go. And then when Seth got eliminated and it was down to Punk and Cena, and then I was like, the door's still open. The door's still open. Why is the door still open? Why is the door still open? What are we doing here? And I kept thinking, is Roman coming out here and going to do something? And then of course Punk's over the rope, and then I was like, oh no, it's coming. And then the stamp, I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, no, that's it. Cena's winning now. So, but even then, I wasn't like, I didn't go to, Punk didn't win or anything like that. But I was happy with the match as a whole. I thought it was great. And of course, it led to what it led to, which was the heel turn of the century by some margin. And yeah, and again, in hindsight, I don't think you can have the chamber match not be anything other than it was, and then have the segment after. Because I think a lot of people are going, why is the segment going on last? Like, what is happening here?
I thought. Yeah.
And even when Cena won, there wasn't anything in my head where I was going, oh, the segment's next. It was, oh, Cena's won, so it's Cena and Cody for Mania. That's it. Like, there was nothing in my head was going, we're going to see something mind-blowing here. It was just, Cody's going to say no, and we'll move on, and that'll be it.
Yeah. Well, that's it. My brain at that point was like, when Cody came out and then The Rock interrupted, I was like, okay, Cody's going to say no. Although they did have me when Cody came out in black, I have to say.
I did notice that. Like, when he had his darker coat on, I was like, oh, I was like, dear.
I'm like, you clever buggers, because you know exactly what every wrestling fan's thinking. But like, he comes out, and I'm the entire time I'm thinking, yeah, he's going to say no. Like, we both predicted he was going to say no. And then my thought was, okay, what we could see is maybe The Rock take a bump or two here, where Cody and Cena team up, and you have that classic, the two baby faces team up and then realize, oh wait, we're facing each other at Mania. So you have this moment where Cody says, no, that's the big moment. He tries to go for a rock bottom. It ends up being an AA into a crossroads. Rock leaves the ring, and then you end up with the camera shot of WrestleMania sign behind with them both facing each other with smiles on their faces. How wrong were we? But yeah, like that's all my brain was thinking of. I was like, okay, that's what they're gonna do. Really nice closing shot to the show, and everyone's gonna get excited that the Rock's taking a bump or two, sort of thing. But yeah, like and then it ends in that shocking fashion. What a pay per view. We said it at the end of the Royal Rumble pay per view. Was this one of the best Royal Rumble pay per views of all time? I think this is one of the best Chamber pay per views of all time.
Absolutely.
And to do that back to back is so impressive.
Yeah.
And just shows how hot this year has started. And again, 2 pay per views on the bounce. Triple H has ended it in a shocking manner. You know, we've all said along the road, it's so predictable. It's so predictable. And at every road, Triple H goes, nah, I've got other plans, mate. Honestly, really good start to the year. Both pay-per-views stand out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't put it any of a better way than you've just said there, in all honesty, Bragster. Like, the Chamber itself, in terms of the Chamber matches, excellent. Sami KO, brilliant. You had Orton's return, you had Jade's return, you had even the tag match was good. And then to top all that off, you then have the biggest heel turn there's ever probably been. And now you're going to build to Mania for the next 5-6 weeks. Like, it's insane, like, how good that show was. Like, that could, like, we were saying how good the Rumble was.
Yeah.
I generally, there is a real possibility that this Chamber pay-per-view could be the best one of the year.
Yeah.
Like, because I love Mania.
Yeah.
But with it being 2 nights, there's more that can
go wrong
or not be as good, and there's more stuff you've got to have in, and there's always going to be filler matches that maybe don't go quite right at Mania. It's just one of those weird things.
Yep.
And after Mania, they always have a bit of a struggle, unless it's a Money in the Bank or a SummerSlam or something like that. They always have a bit of a struggle getting a pay-per-view to be consistently good throughout the entirety of the show. And this, from top to bottom, was great. And I would struggle to see how they get another good show as good as this, top to bottom. But they've given themselves a definite way into it with what they've got heading into Mania. So, with that being said, we said before the Chamber, obviously we had the Chamber preview last week, we were on a bit of a knife's edge in terms of how we were feeling going into Mania, and that the Chamber itself, in terms of the pay-per-view, was going to be the tipping point of whether it was going to massively build the hype with the Rock Cody stuff, or if it was going to maybe crash and burn, and then they were going to have to do a lot of building to get us to a point where Mania was feeling like a Mania weekend and we were going to be hyped for it sufficiently. So I guess my question to you now, Bragster, is, with everything that's happened in the pay-per-view, where are you at in terms of hype for Mania? Like, what's your hype level at this point?
I'm so bloody hyped. It's ridiculous. Like, in the build-up, we were kind of like, obviously you fancy book away, and you sort of like, what could be the best Mania card? You know, what would, you know, live up to the hype? Because we all going into December, all were like, this could be one of the best Manias ever if they do this correctly. And I'm just going to name you a few matches. Right?
Just a few.
Just a few off the top of my head, right? That is likely to happen, right, at Mania. Just to prove my point. Cody Rhodes versus John Cena for the world title. Jey Uso versus Gunther for the world title. CM Punk versus Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns in a triple threat match. Rhea Ripley versus Io Sky versus Bianca Belair for the world title in a triple threat match. Charlotte Flair versus Tiffany Stratton for the world title. IC Championship mayhem, because that entire section of WWE is just so many people. You've got the likes of Braun, Penta, Finn, Styles, Logan Paul, all of which in the possible IC title match, and I'm definitely forgetting. Sheamus is a possibility, Ludwig Kaiser is a possibility for all of this like IC nonsense. We know that's going to happen.
Yeah.
There's another match. We know that LA Knight's going to win back the US title, and we're going to have a nice little US title match. Again, lovely. Like, the possibility of Jade Cargill versus Naomi on that card is there. You've then got a possibility of, Roxanne and Bailey or whatever, possibly running that back at some point.
Did you have KO and Randy on that list?
KO and Randy as well. Oh, possibly Sami Zayn and Karrion Kross if Sami Zayn can drag himself out of the grave he was just put in by Kevin Owens.
Yeah.
So many matches I could already come up with, and there's not many there that I wouldn't be excited for. Looking at the ones I've named, all of them to some capacity I would be excited to see.
Yeah.
And that is almost unfathomable. That's not even including the possibility of a Solo Sikoa versus Jacob Fatu match, which has been heavily hinted. Just more and more is coming to my head as time goes. And that's all off the top of my head. That's without any official build, bar the winners of the Chambers and the Royal Rumble. No official build or any confirmation of any matches.
Yep. Yeah.
But yet we know roughly what's going to happen. And it's so good. People may complain about the Punk triple threat match because they're spoiled sports is what they are. And they won't enjoy good things. Because it's very rare in wrestling you get a triple threat match for no title where everything matters. Enjoy wrestling. Jesus Christ, just enjoy it. Because bloody hell, you get good things. I'm so high. I just can't even think in my brain how I could be any more hyped at this point. And I just know I will. In a few weeks' time, my body will be bursting with joy of how good everything's going to be.
But it's like you say, there's so many things we probably don't even know about at this point. There's loads of stuff that could be added in. You've got Becky Lynch potentially coming back at some point. You've got LA Knight potentially getting the US title back and facing someone else, or Nakamura facing someone else. We don't know what's happening there. You've got, there's so many pieces that need to be put in. Alexa Bliss, what's happening with Alexa? She's gonna have a match of some sort somewhere.
You presume so.
It's crazy, how many people that could be off the shelf or not potentially be on the main card if things fall the right way or the wrong way, I guess, in their eyes. But there's really, from top to bottom, for both Saturday and the Sunday night, you could have 6 out of 6 matches both nights where you're thinking there's no lost matches here. There's no filler gaps. It's all potentially any of these 6 could be match of the night if they all played their cards right. And that's what Mania should be. I feel like Manias have struggled with that for a long time. And it's only really been the past couple where we've had more good matches than we've had bad. And this may well be the stars aligning to give us that Mania we've all been dying for really for the past 10 years. And again, with the guys and girls at play who are wrestling in this day and age, it's about time we got a Mania that lives up to the era that they're in and what they are capable of. And it feels like, again, don't want to get too ahead of myself because, again, things can happen. We're only in March. But it feels like the stars are finally starting to align and we might get a Mania. Because, again, I'm on in the grand scheme of wrestling fandom, I am very much in the recent category. I've only been around wrestling for the past 10 years. And I don't have many Manias where I can point at a Mania and go, that's a great Mania. This is one of the best Manias we've ever had. I've got moments I can point to, but I don't have Manias as a whole. And it felt like as time went on with Manias, they were getting steadily worse in a way because they
Yeah.
got so long and longer and longer and longer, and then eventually they made it much better by splitting it into two and did Saturday and Sunday. And the past couple of years, they've just been building and building and getting better and better and better. And I think last year was good Mania. I think the year before was good Mania as well. I think, obviously, depending on your perspective of Cody losing at the time, it might have soured it a little bit. But I think they've been building to a point. And I generally felt like last year, like, I didn't feel they could get to a better spot. But it feels like they're on the precipice of getting there and clearing that goalpost if they nail it with the build, and I think they will. In all honesty, I've said many times, even on this podcast, I'm willing to wait it out and give it the chance. Much like we said about the Rock and Cody segment last week, we both said it. Let's see what they do. Let's see how it goes, and fingers crossed it'll come out the right way. And I think it seems a lot more this year that maybe Rock and Triple H are on the same page than before. Last year, it felt like a lot was going on in the background. Obviously, we don't know the full details of it, but it felt...
even the documentary didn't reveal any of the details.
Well, yeah, no, like the all-reveal documentary didn't give anything away. And again, that could have been them putting something out into the dirt sheets to get that discussion point up, to give a bit more suspense as to whether or not Cody was going to make it to the main event, or if The Rock was going to be in there, or whatever. But it just feels like all aspects are sort of working on the same level and are all on the same page, and we're potentially, and again, people may well shoot me down, but this could reach the heady heights that I hear so much about WrestleMania 17. Like, I think we could be in for an all-timer here if they get this right. And really, apart from maybe sabotage, there isn't really anything stopping them.
No. For me, the big thing with it is this maybe the sign that this is the first moment where we're feeling Triple H is at the helm? Because obviously he's been at the helm for a while, but it takes a while to build a brand. We saw that with NXT.
Yep.
But the heights of NXT, all the way until Triple H was no longer in charge, most of their pay-per-views or PLEs, top to bottom, were brilliant, especially Stand and Deliver. You know, I know that's the new name, but the NXT takeover at Mania, wherever that would be, which the last few years have been Stand and Deliver. That's why I call it Stand and Deliver, because naming all of the NXT takeovers is bloody impossible. But the pay-per-view on Mania weekend always delivered from top to bottom at Triple H's helm. Most, if not all, from top to bottom were excellent. Excellent pay-per-views. Maybe this is the first moment where Triple H has gotten all of the people to where he wants them to be. He's signed his own wrestlers. He's signed people back. He's released people that he wanted to release that maybe, you know, he felt no longer, you know, worked in his plans. Have we gotten maybe to that point where this is Triple H's WWE? These are the people at the top that he wants at the top, the people in the mid card that he wants in the mid card, people in the tag team division that he wants there, and it works. Maybe that's the case, and maybe this is the first sign of it. And if so, Lord baby Jesus, thank you, because wrestling fans have been clamoring for just to have years of good stuff. And as you said, not much should go wrong now, and that does put the pressure on Triple H a lot. But I just think that the wrestlers will deliver in terms of matches. They do, even when the build is naff. We saw it last year with Bayley and Io. Yep. The bookings committee did everything in their power to make no one excited for that match, despite the fact that the wrestling world wanted to be. And they made it brilliant and was a great match because the wrestlers always deliver. So if they deliver on the build, wow, we're going to be in for a treat.
Absolutely. 100%. Couldn't agree more. Now, with that being said, let's move on from the chamber and the build-up of hype and get into some AEW stuff, shall we? So, with that being said, AEW has happened this week. I know it's hard to remember when you've had such a brilliant show as the Elimination Chamber was, but Bragster is going to take us through the AEW stuff now and give us a quick roundup before we get into some Monday Night Raw stuff as well. So, Bragster, take us away.
Yeah, so this was, it started off with Cope basically saying that he's going to take everyone out in an ambulance. Obviously, we had Pac taken out last week. He basically came up with an ambulance and said, Death Riders, you're going to be leaving through there. We then cut to MJF getting his AEW tattoo removed, just to add more heel work to MJF's character. Him basically saying that, he gave, his leg and stuff to the company and got it shoved back in his face. And, so therefore he's going to take that tattoo away and remove that from his body sort of thing. Just good heel work, worth mentioning. Then we've got Hangman squashed Aaron Solo, all done in his normal clothes, which is quite fun. I always like it when wrestlers don't take things seriously or wrestle in their normal clothes. I love it. He then basically brought a chair into the ring, called out MJF and said, I won't leave until someone drags out MJF. MJF comes out and he goes, I've got to focus on the match. You're a really tough competitor. I've got to focus on the match, this, that, and the other. And he initially came out with like a blooded towel. And everyone was like, okay. And then MJF's cutting this promo about how he's got to focus on Revolution. So, and you kind of forget about the towel briefly. And he goes to leave. And he goes, wait. I forgot why I came out here. You should check on your buddy. And it cuts to Christopher Daniels blooded up. And Hangman goes to find MJF and can't find him. There is a brief moment where the camera cuts a little bit too early, and you can see Christopher Daniels still trying to hit his head to get the blood out, which is quite funny. It happens in TV, doesn't it? But yeah, it was.
You say that. I mean, yeah, I think in news outlets or whatever, it does happen. That can happen from time to time. But I don't really remember a lot in wrestling where they've cut away and it's someone's still trying to drag their head open with a tin can opener or something like that,
Well, people were like, "Oh, why didn't they pre-record the segment?" Especially a lot of people who maybe didn't watch the show live. But then when you have Hangman run into the back, and to see Christopher Daniels obviously so they had to then do it live to be able to do the run to the back and the checking on him. Otherwise, you're going to have the poor man make himself bleed twice. Just so you pre-record the one segment and get it. So
I know what you mean. I agree with what you're saying.
But that it's just for explanation for people who may have seen it on social media and may be like, "Oh, I don't know." That's why they couldn't do it is because of the subsequent segment that happened afterwards. Then we had Ospreay versus Brian Keith. Basically, a deal was made between Don Callis and Jericho to put a hit out on Ospreay. Obviously, doesn't work. Brian Keith loses. And then Ospreay and Fletcher brawl in the crowd. Nice, fun stuff. Mercedes Moné says that she's going to beat Momo at Revolution. Momo confronted Mercedes Moné at Grand Slam after the match with Harley Cameron, saying that she was going to challenge her at Revolution. The reason I mention this, Billy Starks on AEW TV. Yes, more Billy Starks. Bloody love Billy Starks. But it also hints at a possible Athena debut / return to AEW, where there's just this moment where I feel like adding Billy Starks in there as Momo's mouthpiece in the build-up to Revolution hints at the fact that people have theorized that Athena's going to be the one to take it off of Mercedes. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that's the transition from ROH to AEW TV. And it starts with Billy Starks maybe getting beaten up by Mercedes and having her own program with Mercedes. And you can have that later in the year when maybe Athena loses the title or she's a double champ, even better. Then we had the Outrunners versus the Murder Machines. Shock. The Outrunners won. They won to face the Hurt Syndicate. It happened. And it all happened because of a Hurt Syndicate distraction, because the Murder Machines dominated. Really good storytelling, because it clearly shows that the Hurt Syndicate are like, we're not scared of anyone, but there's this little thing of that. Why did you distract then? Why did you cause the loss for the Murder Machines? So they're holding off on that match, but I'm going to mention it now because it's only in passing, but it gets announced on Collision that that's a Revolution match, the Hurt Syndicate versus the Outrunners. So it seems like they're holding off on the Murder Machines thing to happen down the line, maybe at a TV show special, or maybe even at Double or Nothing. Maybe they do hold off all that way.
Yeah.
Then we have a Swerve and Prince Nana segment with Ricochet. Basically, Nana's saying that I need the Swerve that won the title. Like Swerve's saying that he needs gold. He needs to be back on top. And Nana mentions later on, after the big bit in the segment, that we need the vicious version back. And basically, Swerve wants the rematch with Ricochet because Ricochet beat him. Ricochet says, nah, which is fair because he beat him. And this is chef's kiss. Really good storytelling here, where you have Nana go, wow, what if I tell you that I've spoken to Tony Khan, and if you accept the match, it will be a number one contenders match for the world title. Therefore, you get your shot straight away. If you beat Swerve again, you get your shot. And then Ricochet goes, okay, well done. You got me. It's on. So we therefore get in that match at Revolution as a number one contenders match. It's really fun. I think it makes it far more unpredictable, because initially you would presume that Swerve's going to get the win back. But if it's a number one contenders match, then okay, do you want Swerve getting the win back but then losing the title match? Do you want Ricochet really going over twice and then maybe not winning the title? It raises a lot of questions, where actually that match has a lot at stake, and even no matter who the winner is, there's going to be questions, which is always good. Really nice segment there. We then have the Undisputed Kingdom versus Daniel Garcia and FTR. Brilliant. Really good trios match. Really enjoyed this. This reminds me so much of NXT. Like, so much of the NXT tag matches where it would just be chaos, and then you'd have moments where like everyone's got submissions or everyone's got pins on at the same time, and it just like everything I loved about NXT was this match. Like just everything that got me back into wrestling, because NXT was the thing that got me back into wrestling. This was it. This was the thing that just like I was like, yes, this is why I love tag wrestling. Yeah. I have such a soft spot for tag wrestling. It's one thing that I adore. This was why. Brilliant match. In the end, Adam Cole pins Daniel Garcia. As I said last week, they put over Daniel Garcia as this threat in the trios match, and you've sort of got this moment of Daniel Garcia is not going to get pinned. Because he's the champion and he's the threat in this match consistently. And then in this one, he then gets pinned. So you have last week actually helping the shock of this week even more. Then it gets announced that on Collision, it will be Adam Cole versus Daniel Garcia for that TNT title. Mm-hmm. We'll get to that later. Then we have Cope and the Death Riders in a bit of a brawl, is the best way of describing it. It starts backstage, it goes out into the crowd, ends up in the ring. We then have Claudio threaten a concerto to Cope because Cope took out Pac. Jay White comes out for the distraction. Then we have Cope get back on top. It causes Willie Yuta to accidentally hit Marina Shafir in the face and knock her out. We then have Yuta go to the outside of the ring. Cope concertos Claudio. Yuta then they try and get Yuta back into the ring to concerto Yuta. John Moxley manages to reach over the barricade and pull him back into the crowd. So Yuta's escaped, but Jay White is stood there with a chair to stop them getting involved and stopping, more carnage from happening. To which it does, because Cope gets that mean look on his face of, I'm going to concerto Marina Shafir. I'm going to hit a woman, which we know both Randy Orton and Edge, who's now Cope, would have done many, many times, because they are evil, evil men when they want to be evil. And in the end, Willow Nightingale comes out and does it herself. The happy-go-lucky woman who just is happy, just serious face with the happy music on the background. She just goes concertos Marina Shafir. And then later on the night, it gets shown that both of them have been shoved in the ambulance that Cope turned up in initially. And there are 2 more of the Death Riders off to hospital, leaving only John Moxley and Wheeler Yuta, which will become important later. Then we have Deonna Purrazzo versus Harley Cameron. We all love Harley Cameron. And she picked up the victory, second victory in AEW. Really good stuff. Really nice match. Very simple. Nothing to shout home about, other than the fact Harley Cameron wins. Then we have the main event, Orange Cassidy versus Takeshita. I honestly could not do this match justice. It was... one of my second sentence, bear in mind there's a lot more on this note, could watch these 2 all day, was what I wrote, because it was just I'm just glued to the screen while them 2 are in the ring. It's like you've got the strikes of Takeshita versus the pace and the flippiness of Orange Cassidy. You've got an incredible sequence where you've got Orange Cassidy in the air, and they're countering each other up in the air, where they're trying to go for a stunner or trying to go for a move here, and it all leads into a blue thunderbomb by Takeshita. Really, really nice stuff. We have a beach break by Cassidy on the announce desk, but the table didn't really break. It half broke, so it somehow the tables look more brutal if they just don't break. So it looked really good. The 10 count gets broken at the same time. They're both on the outside after the table spot. Both sold it. Both came in at the same time. And Orange Cassidy's first to his feet. Orange punch into a diving DDT to the outside. He then takes the glasses off of Don Callis, who nicked them up earlier on in the match, brings him back into the ring, goes for the Slumdog, which is then reversed into a reversal, which then Takeshita kicks out of, and then Takeshita hits the Raging Fire for the win. It really, really fast-paced stuff. Really enjoyed it. Great main event for the Continental title. And yeah, we're going into Takeshita versus Kenny Omega at Revolution. I do not need to eat any pieces of clothing, because what I said would happen has happened. Really, really good Dynamite. I like the last half of that show. Really, was really, really good. The first half, you probably could have gotten away with not watching necessarily, but if you watched it from the Swerve segment onwards, you would have had a really, really good time with top tier wrestling TV.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was Dynamite. Just Dynamite so far. Okay,
that's just
awesome.
Dynamite.
Yeah, and I know I've seen stuff from Collision, so I know there's plenty of stuff to talk about there. So let's get straight into it. How was Collision?
Collision was good. We started off with FTR versus Kyle O'Reilly and Roderick Strong. As I mentioned previously, it's just like NXT. It's great. These are all ex-NXT guys just decided... They must just looked at each other backstage and go, should we just put on the classic NXT matches that we used to do? Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. They were really good, weren't they? Yeah, let's put on one of the best TV matches of the year. Yeah, they've just gone and done it again. They put on a really, really good match. But this one, the storytelling was there. And what I love is you had the trios match, which was all about the ending, and you had this one, which had the thread of the story throughout, which is brilliant. They obviously have great chemistry, but you have it quickly sort of end. So I say quickly, it'd been going on for 10 minutes at this point, but it started to build and build and build. Then Dax hit a pile driver on Kyle O'Reilly. 1, 2, 3. Ended really quickly, and you're like, okay. And then you notice Kyle O'Reilly's foot on the rope. And you're like, aha. And then Dax Harwood then looks at the referee and goes, his foot was on the rope. I want to restart the match. And the referee's like, you don't have to. Like, I didn't see it. No one, I didn't see it. So therefore the match is final. And he was like, no, and the referee's like, are you really sure you want me to restart the match? You won. And Dax is like, no, yes, I want to restart the match. So they restart the match. And what I really like about this, and I see it happen often in wrestling sometimes, where they restart the match and then the person who has just been pinned kind of ends up getting the upper hand straight away.
Yeah.
That didn't happen in this one. Dax is straight on back on the attack, as it should be. He's just eating a pile driver, and okay, he got his spot on the ropes, but it's not like he properly kicked out or anything. He's still battered. Dax is still reasonably fresh because he's not been hit in a while. So it made so much sense and really added to the end of the match, where you then have FTR on the advantage. But in the end, their decision ends up costing them. Undisputed Kingdom get the win after some amazing near falls, as in classic tag team fashion. Really enjoyed this match. Go away and watch it. Really, really good stuff. Loved it. Then we go into... Oh, also to mention, FTR didn't shake the hands of the Undisputed Kingdom afterwards.
Yeah.
Which happens a lot with FTR because they always they're almost tweeners all of the time. And they kind of switch depending on how their luck is going. And obviously they've lost 2 matches in a row. Their luck is not so good.
Yeah.
So, really good stuff. Then we go into Wheeler Yuta versus Willie Mack. Excited to see Willie Mack again. Love Willie Mack. Watched him a lot in TNA. Know he's really good, which is what kind of frustrated me with this match, because this match was way more about the post match segment than the actual match, because it was virtually a squash match.
Yeah.
With Willie Yuta obviously winning. But knowing how good Willie Mack is, and like one thing I love AEW for is, even when you think something might be a squash match, if they're not a local talent, usually they get a good showing and you end up with an actual back and forth 10-minute match where, you end up with some really good sequences. I feel like they didn't showcase what Willie Mack could really do. And therefore sort of that kind of hinders Willie Yuta as well, because Willie Yuta could then show off more of what he could do. And they honestly they had a potential possible match of the night that then turned into a bit of a squash match. But when you get to the post-match, you realise that it was way more about what happened afterwards. Mox comes out with the briefcase in hand because Marina Shafir's not here to hold the briefcase. And he basically takes out Willie Mack and then says to Yuta, I want you to take out Cope on Dynamite. It gets announced later on that it will be Wheeler Yuta versus Cope on Dynamite. I wonder what will happen to Wheeler Yuta. But he basically
wins.
But basically, you've got Mox going. We can't have Cope going in 100%. He can't have a free shot at this title. Cope's a dangerous man. We can't have him do this. Way more of a panicked Mox, and then he lifts up Willie Mack and tells Yuta to hit him with the briefcase, to which he does. End of segment. But obviously, it's going to end up with Wheeler Yuta getting taken out and Mox being on his own going into the pay-per-view. I still think they probably should have Mox go over, so Mox kind of escapes with the title sort of thing. Although there is a slight theory that could be where Christian cashes in his little contract, and you have Cope win, or during the match you have Christian come in and maybe nick the title in some way, shape or form, which I would really like. But I would more prefer him cashing in during the match and pinning Cope, and then you've got this big moment, or even cashing in and then Moxley pinning pinning Christian, and you end up with the moment where Cope's like, I had this free shot and you've allowed him to get away with it. Anything like that I'd really enjoy. We then get another Monet Stark segment, more of Billy Starks on TV. Really like that stuff. Then we have Toni Storm doing a promo from a hospital bed because she got taken out last week. and she's got this big neck brace on in a hospital bed. But
Classic Tony Storm.
It's classic Tony, but it's all gowned up, so it's not a hospital bed. But that's the point, is it's not a hospital bed as well. So it's so funny. She basically says that in Australia, did you enjoy Australia? Because Australia was foreplay to her. And for the Hollywood ending, she wants to end it properly. Let's end it properly. I want no disqualifications. Don't want them. I want no countouts. I want no rope breaks. They can piss off, was the words that came out of her mouth, which I loved. I want falls count anywhere, no holds barred, and says, Mariah May, at Revolution, you will meet God. Really good promos. This feud is one of the best things on AEW TV right now, one of the best things in wrestling TV right now, and I just know that last match is going to hit, and I cannot wait for it. Really, really good stuff. We then have Swerve Strickland versus Connors, Clark Connors, and this was purely a match to showcase that Swerve was getting back to his vicious self. He injured the arm of Connors early and then just kept attacking it throughout the entire match. Really, really good stuff. Swerve gets the win. Really enjoyed it. Harley Cameron then jumps on commentary. And the reason I'm laughing is because you have Tony Schiavone go, you're not scheduled. Why are you here? And Harley's like, because I was watching the match back and I realised that I won, but you guys didn't name my finisher. I realized that my finisher doesn't have a name.
Yeah.
And she was like, and Tony's like, so you came out here to name your finisher? And she was like, yes, Tony, yes. We're going to work together and you're going to name my finisher. And she's like, okay, let's think of a name. And Tony's like, yeah, so, what's your finishing move? And Harley goes, my finishing move. Tony, you're a genius. That's the name. My finishing move. And Tony's like, so when I'm calling a match, I go, and she's hit her finishing move. And Harley goes, exactly, genius. Thank you, Tony. And leaves. And Tony looks really confused. Really good comedy stuff. Usually I'd hate this kind of thing, but I think Harley Cameron could do anything, and I would laugh.
Fair enough.
Then we have Shane Taylor Promotions get a squash match win, which I would probably not mention to the extent if Adam Cole didn't then come out after as they were leaving to have his match with Daniel Garcia for the TNT title. This is a match as you would imagine it being, just really good stuff. The crowd was really hot. Cole's leg got attacked by Garcia early and targeted early, and you have Cole not then going for the Panama Sunrise, or even when he goes to the boom, he's going with a different leg because he knows that if he hits it with that leg, his moves haven't got the same strength. And that was a theme throughout, and it started to build and build and build. You then have him not go for the Panama Sunrise. He hesitates, which causes Garcia to get on top into an ankle submission. But Cole fights to the ropes to get out. You then have a pile driver on the apron to Daniel Garcia, which then drags Daniel Garcia in for the pin. But obviously, Garcia kicks out. Yeah. Then you have the 5-minute warning because there's a 20-minute time limit. There's time limits in AEW, obviously. And right as that happens, the infantry and Shane Taylor Promotions interfere and it causes a DQ. So I enjoyed the match, and then they caused a disqualification. I was like, brilliant, whatever. But ultimately, it feeds into the story that's been going on. I'm not too angry with it. I also don't mind the title matches not being on last if it ends in interference. That's my little caveat rule. I still think it probably should have main evented, but I don't mind as much because it didn't end in decisive fashion. Yeah. We then have a couple of backstage segments, which then result in MXM and Johnny TV being announced to be facing Big Boom AJ, Orange Cassidy, and Mark Briscoe at Revolution. We then have Julia Hart versus Queen Amarata, round 2. 2 weeks on the bounce we get in this match. Difference is, shocker, Queen Amarata wins. The heart doesn't always win. This comes after Serena Deeb has apparently been training or helping Amarata, giving tips behind the scenes. Amarata then picks up the win. So that sort of carries on that story. But after the match, Brody King comes to console Julia Hart, and then Okada attacks Brody King. Presumably that will be announced for Revolution as well in the week leading up to Revolution. Then we had a Kenny Omega promo where basically he said that this isn't about revenge. The reason he's gone for Takeshita isn't about revenge. It's about the title. He wants to be known as the best, and to be known as the best, he's got to beat Takeshita and get that title around his waist. Yeah. So little bit of change of motivation to maybe what people expected, but he kind of hints that, you know, if he doesn't win this match, maybe Kenny Omega isn't Kenny Omega anymore. Maybe he's not, maybe he's just got to accept that he won't win another major title again. So yeah, just a nice little carry on of that story. And then the main event, the Learning Tree versus Bandido and Powerhouse Hobbs. This was in Powerhouse Hobbs' hometown. That's also why I don't mind it being in the main event, because when it's your hometown, you get, you know, like the My GM games and stuff where they go, I'm in my hometown, can I have a match? It's like that. I'll allow it. Like, you know, it's your hometown, do what you want. But in the end, Hobbs picks up the victory, of course he does, and pins Brian Keith. Yeah, good Collision. Nothing like Dynamite was definitely much better than Collision. Collision was very much what it usually is, which is like just continuation of things, nothing major really happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, still enjoyed it. But yeah, it was just a carrying on. Very obvious that we are 1 week away from the pay-per-view, and we're just trundling along just to get there, just so we don't ruin the momentum of anything, or, you know, it's what happens in wrestling, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And after, what was it, before Grand Slam in Australia, when they announced that Edge and, not Edge, Cope and Moxley were going to have their solo match before the tag match they were having at the Grand Slam, I was kind of pointless. So maybe they learned a bit of a lesson from that, and just sort of, let's just get to the pay-per-view and see how we do.
Yeah.
But all sounds good from an AEW perspective. Obviously, we'll see what happens at Revolution. And yeah, that was Bragster's AEW Weekly Roundup. So we'll leave it there for now. And moving on from that, we will now head into a Raw recap from last night's action. Again, not lots to talk about this time round for Raw. I think the majority of stuff will probably be on SmackDown this week. So obviously next week's episode will be a bit more interested in that regard. But let's get into Raw, and let's get into the couple of bits we do need to talk about. So again, started out the show with a pretty great promo from CM Punk. He came in with all guns blazing on this one. There was not a person he didn't shred to pieces. And it was more like the CM Punk of old. And this is the Punk I want to see a bit more often now. He wrecked the announce desk on the way to doing his promo, which was very nice of him. And then before he started his promo with a one-liner of, I'm liable to get us cancelled off of Netflix, which told you the mood that he was in on that very moment. So, and then before he started rinsing people, he then reminded everyone that everyone thinks he's exhausted all of his options to get into that Mania main event, which I thought was very interesting and very much something we're going to have to pay attention to in the near future, because I think Paul Heyman might be getting a phone call in the near future. And then he started talking about Rock, and he called him a bald fraud, that he was going through a midlife crisis. He even started mocking the arm hits that Rock does every time he comes out, saying that he doesn't give a damn about anybody. He has goosebumps at the start every time he comes out for wrestling, and that's about it. And that he thanks his lucky stars that he's never been delusional enough to carry around a fake title. And that he isn't desperate enough to sell his own soul to get his own way. That was The Rock. That was just The Rock. That was it. That was the first 20 seconds of that particular segment. Then he got on to Cena, saying that he stole something from him at the Chamber, and that he had given him the benefit of the doubt that he hadn't had to qualify for the Chamber because, you know, it's his last one. He's been doing this for 20 years now. He's probably earned the right to get into the Chamber. But that's all done and dusted. He now is glad that everyone can see what Punk has seen out of Cena for the past 20 years. And that he's going to make Cena make a wish that he never gets his hands on him. Again, eviscerating both Cena and Rock in the process, and then called them both bull frauds by the end of that particular segment. So Punk was on one. And then he got to Seth Rollins. And again, didn't get very far into Seth Rollins, but the one line that came out of it was that Becky Lynch better come out and save Seth Rollins before he puts her man in a wheelchair. Cue Seth Rollins coming out and a mass brawl ensuing for the next 5-10 minutes. And I'm pretty sure it carried on into the commercial break as well as backstage as things were happening on the show. And then, and again, it does happen later in the show, but like you did with AEW, I'm going to refer to it now. We got announced that at the Madison Square Garden of all places, we're getting a steel cage match between Punk and Rollins next week. Holy love of God, am I excited for that? And that was the opening segment. So, the rest of the show was a little bit so-so. Wasn't necessarily bad, but it wasn't as much, I think, going on that needs to be going into detail. So I'll reel through until we get to the main event. So we had Gunther come out berating Otis like he did Akira Tozawa the other week. And then had a match with Otis. Now, surprisingly, this wasn't as straight over as a rollover as I thought it was going to be. Otis did get some moves in and did get some moments of momentum going. Obviously, Gunther ended up winning, but I think Otis actually got a bit of shine out of this, and hopefully gets a bit more in the coming weeks and months, and maybe gets a bit more TV time. Because again, I do think, even though he's maybe not necessarily World Championship material, I do think he is quite entertaining and should probably have a bit more time on the TV screens. So we'll see what that leads to. AJ Styles then was backstage and got asked about Cena, says that he didn't see it coming, to then get interrupted by Bragster's favourite wrestler, Karrion Kross, who then said, if you really think about it, it really wasn't that much of a surprise. Styles then says he's calling out Logan Paul next week at Madison Square Garden, and that potentially might be a match between them two. You then had Ivy Nile versus Valkyria in a title match for the Intercontinental title. I think this was a pretty good match. I think Valkyria looked, again, great. Back-to-back title defenses. And Ivy Nile looked pretty good as well. Again, it was a good match. It wasn't spectacular, but it wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. And again, more title matches, please, for Valkyria to build it up, because there was a bit more of a crowd response this week. Again, not necessarily a massive amount improved, but it was a little bit more. So it is starting to build now. And that's what we wanted to see. Then we got the appearance of one Chad Gable in his own segment, which I like to call Dodgy Conversations with Old Men in a Back Alley. And basically talking to some old guy who says, I'm going to give you the power to take on luchadors, but you'll never understand this power. And basically gives him this trodden down cardboard box, to which Gable opens it up and then yanks something out, but you don't see what it is. Now, if I'm pie in the sky fearing here, it's probably his own luchador mask, in the fact that when he puts it on, he will become a luchador himself and therefore capable of beating his own luchadors. Will that be the case? Will it be some weird voodoo doll that we don't know? Could be anything. Could be a carrot. Could be anything he really needs it to be.
Why do I really hope he becomes a voodoo doll? That would be so bloody
Maybe
funny.
It's a voodoo doll that Alexa Bliss has put in, stitched together, and then they suddenly become
Don't even
teammates.
put that
I
in
don't
the
know.
air.
But anyway, Chad Gable has been seen for the first time in a few weeks, so we'll see what that leads to. War Raiders retain their tag titles versus American Made. Judgment Day very foolishly tried to lay a trap for Bron Breakker. Didn't work. Bron ended up spearing Carlito into the next millennium, and Finn got saved by Dirty Dom. And a little bit earlier in the show, there was a little bit of friction with Finn and Judgment Day, as it's been building over the past few weeks. And Dom once again mentioning we should get a new member. Finn being adamant that is not going to happen under his watch. We'll watch this space, because I highly suspect he might not have a watch to watch out for in the very near future, but we'll wait and see. Then we got to the main event, which we'd been building up for such a long time. We've known this for a few weeks now, this match was coming. And boy, oh boy, did it hit the metrics of anticipation. Io Sky versus Rhea Bloody Ripley. And yeah, it was a great match overall. Built really well. Io, once again, looked great. The crowd was very much behind Io in this match. Again, behind both competitors, really. Rhea looking great as always. And then there was a bit of interaction at the end towards Rhea and Bianca. Rhea getting a little bit distracted, taking the eye off the ball a little bit, and Bianca's just like, I'm just watching the match. I'm not doing anything here. Just leave me alone. I'm applauding. Because I think what had happened was Bianca started applauding Io, and Rhea was like, who the hell are you applauding? What the hell are you doing? And then they have a bit of a scuffle. They're shoving each other backwards and forwards. Then Bianca shoved Rhea into the apron, and I was kind of like, is that going to be a DQ? Technically not a hit, so I guess that's how they got away with it. And then the ref sort of clambered down and was like, right, enough. This is the Women's Championship match. We're going to do this properly. Get back in the ring. Blah, blah, blah. Rhea, on her best behavior, got back into the ring and said, I'll see you at Mania, Bianca. And then proceeded to lose the match. And then Io got the pin. And Io Sky won the Women's Championship. And again, there were signs that this was going to happen because she was very much heavily advertised of being in this match. And every time it got mentioned that Rhea was going to face whoever was getting into the chamber match and winning to face her, everyone kept going, but don't forget about Io. Don't forget about Io. Io's still there.
Even when they announced the match, they Elimination Chamber, rather than going, they'll face they'll face the women's champion at WrestleMania, Rhea Ripley, or Io Sky.
Yeah.
During the introduction of the entire chamber match, rather than just saying they will face the women's champion, they made sure to name the people.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
you knew that Io was there, and as you said,
I think it was clever the way they did it because they obviously put the match the night after the chamber, and then they kept reminding everybody constantly, this match is still happening. Just because this person wins the chamber doesn't mean that's necessarily the way it's going to go. Of course, things can happen. We may well get the triple threat, like we mentioned earlier in the podcast. Again, that imagery of when Bianca came out after winning the chamber, and then you had Rhea, and then Io suddenly pops up in the middle. It kind of led you to believe or tease the fact that we might get the triple threat. So, yeah, overall, Raw, I wouldn't say it was a bad show. I think it was a bit more, I think it was more an opening and ending Raw that was good. The bits in the middle sort of kind of moved things a little bit forward. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Valkyria now that Ivy Niles out the way. Because obviously Ivy attacked Valkyria last week, so I don't think that's going to be much more of a thing. I think American Made are now going to go back to Chad and see what happens with him. And then Judgment Day, obviously, they're always quite entertaining. It'll be interesting to see what they do next, really, and whether that Finn and Braun rivalry continues to build. Those are sort of the questions on my head on top of Raw from there. So that was Raw this week, and we'll leave it there for now. So we've done the weekly roundup. We reviewed Elimination Chamber. We've talked about the greatest heel turn that there's ever been. Can this show get any better? I'd argue no, but Bragster certainly thinks it can. So, Bragster, why don't you take it away for your potentially favourite moment of the week?
My voice is dying on me, so let's see if this works. Is taking the pins, Wrestler of the Week.
It's Wrestler of the Week, everybody, as Bragster's voice starts to die as he takes a drink. So, again, lots of candidates. Lots of candidates this week. You could go either chamber match, you could go Sami KO, you could go for Io or Rhea, you could go from someone for AEW if you so choose, Bragster. So who's it going to be? Who is your Wrestler of the Week this week?
I can't not say that a match is match of the year and not give it to one of those two. So it is between Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Both have already been given a Wrestler of the Week nomination this year. KO getting 2 already this year. Now, for me, I was thinking about it. I was going back and forth after the show, and then I sort of just decided yesterday. I was like, no, that one of those two is the rest, and it's Sami Zayn. I don't think as good as it was, you don't get the payoff of everything without Sami Zayn selling his backside off for that entire match. Like, just the subtleties of like trying to get feeling back into his arms and just like not quite being okay after landing on his neck and stuff. It just, all those subtleties are things that elevated that match to the next level. So Sami Zayn is my wrestler of the week.
Yeah, I think I have to agree. I think we have to both say Sami here. I think as great as KO was, I think this was a Sami Zayn 101 match in that he was the underdog fighting from underneath, scrappy as he always is. And again, if people ever want to watch classic Sami Zayn, I think they can watch this match and get the general gist of what the guy's about. I thought he was fantastic from top to bottom. Obviously, him and KO have amazing chemistry from all their years on the road together, and the many feuds they've had and many matches together as a tag team or working together for whatever reason. Yeah, I can't really add a lot more than what you've already said, Braxton. Unfortunately, I just think I thought he was fantastic, and yeah, I think it's going to take a lot for a match to get past that. I think the benchmark for the rest of this year is probably going to be that Sami KO match, and it'll be interesting to see if we get many matches. If we get even 3 or 4 matches, I think we're doing well. That get to that level, I think we've done very well. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, unfortunately, I can't go into more detail than that. I think it's probably one of the quicker Wrestler of the Weeks we've had. So,
but also it means that is the first ever time you and me have agreed on somebody.
Yeah, again, I think it's. I don't necessarily think we disagree necessarily. I think it's
no,
a case
but
of
like picking the same person. We've never once picked the same person, but I think that just shows.
Yeah.
Out of all the wrestling, out of all the things that have been brilliant, it just having one person stand out so much on a card, which, as we mentioned, had the return of Jade Cargill, the return of Randy Orton, the heel turn of John Cena, the F-bomb by Cody Rhodes, and yet so many people came out, including us, thinking about Sami Zayn and his performance in that match and how good that match was. That just shows how high of a standard that he was on that night. Obviously, not discounting KO, but sometimes the loser looks better.
Yeah.
You know, for a winner to look so good, the loser has to sell their backside off, and Sami did that.
Absolutely. And so we'll leave it there for the rest of the week and head into the main event. So, we've already spoke about it at length. Obviously, we started the show with probably the greatest heel turn there has ever been. Certainly this side of the year 2000, I would have to say. I think the main question in my mind going into now, obviously, the build to Mania and what happens next, and there's, again, who knows exactly when we'll see Rock or Cena the next time. Obviously, we're going to see Cody on Friday for SmackDown, and there's going to be a lot of build from everybody. I think we're going to see everybody a lot during these next 6 weeks, which is great, again, because I think after a moment like that, you have to capitalize on what we've had and what we've got out of it, and I think they'll do that perfectly over the next 6 weeks or so. And they don't even have to be in the same building. You can have Cena off on a set somewhere on camera, like you've done with The Rock in the past or whatever, and you can have Rock surprise appearance every now and then. But that was a bit of a ramble there. But my main question, I guess, now coming out of this is that image of Cena holding the title at the end of the Rumble. Do we think Cena wins the belt at Mania?
I do. I've always been a believer that even if he got to the main event of WrestleMania, he would lose. I've always had that belief. I don't know why. I think it's the adversity thing going into his final year. I think everyone there'll be a load of people who want Cena to win it wanted Cena to win it at Mania. But there was a lot of fans that were like, the adversity is a much bigger story of throughout the year, like WWE being about Cena, but not in the obnoxious sense, but in the sense of everyone's clambering for that 17th and he just doesn't quite get there. I think him selling his soul and then doing it, and 17th being as a heel will just be brilliant. And I also think that if he doesn't, that there's a small chance that the heel turn retroactively doesn't look as good. Because if he loses and then turns back babyface, and then wins it as a babyface, you have this thing of what was the point of the heel turn? Like it might feel like a waste in retrospect, and and looking back. I think capitalizing on it, having him win as a heel, possibly even through nefarious means, would just be really cool. And I'm someone who's been on the bandwagon for ages if he doesn't win it, and I've completely switched. I'm like, no, he should win it, and I think he will. And then we get into this moment where we have all these different challenges that can face up to him, and our baby faces. You've got Cody, obviously, for round 2, Roman, Seth, Punk, all of which in that mix. That's not including anyone else. I'll swear on the card. That's the people that are right at the top right now. And that's without including any dream matches, that you can include. And I think that, I think Cena winning as a heel and winning the 17th as a heel is brilliant. And I want to see it, and I think we will see it.
Okay. I honestly don't know at this point, because I have this conversation I've had this conversation for the past 48 hours in my head, and I keep going, no, it's going to go this way, no, it's going to go that way. And I think everything you've said is correct. My thing is, with Mania, they always like to have, it's very rare when the bad guy wins at Mania in the main event and the final match. Now, I know we're talking about Cena's final Mania, potentially Cena's final Mania, and I know we're talking about a lot of things here, but I think you could have, I think it can, again, like Chamber, I think this could go about 15 different ways. I have a feeling that they might go a similar route to what they did with Roman at the end of last year, at the end of last Mania, where you get a lot of appearances from people. Where maybe, but it's not, I don't think it's the same ragtag group. I think you've potentially got Roman maybe popping in there at the end, and then he's got a choice to make. Does he help Cody, or does he help his cousin? And then that's how maybe you start the build with him and Rock going into next year. And then maybe Stone Cold, because again, he's come out and said that he'd appear if they wanted him to. You've then got Punk potentially. You've got Seth there still. I think there's potential of you can book yourself in a way that Cody just clings on, and it doesn't make Cena look totally foolish. And it gives you that the happy ending of the Mania. My caveat with it, though, is if they do that, Cena has to win Money in the Bank.
Yes.
And the way he wins Money in the Bank is he doesn't enter the match when everyone else does. He just walks in right at the end and just takes it.
Oh, he does what Brock did.
Yeah. But he doesn't. I don't think they have that pomp and circumstance on it. He just walks in and does it. I don't play his music. He just walks in and just does it and just takes it. When everyone's laid out, there's no one left, and it's just there, and he just goes, thanks, and then he just takes it and goes.
Oh, that would annoy so many people, but it'd be so good.
But it would play into the heel, and again, you can then play off what he did when he won the Money in the Bank last time, when he said, "I'm going to tell you when I'm cashing it in. I'm not going behind your back." Cena will cash it in whenever he decides to cash it in, and it's probably when when Cody's at his most broken. And cannot stand on his own 2 feet. And Cena's like, there we go. There's my 17th title. Thanks very much. See you later.
I've always had the thought of him cashing in on Punk being such a poetic.
Yeah. And again, if Punk is going to pull that lever with Heyman and get himself in the main event, if Punk wins, that's maybe how you do it.
Yeah.
that's maybe how you do it. And again, I also think I am 50-50, like I said before.
Yeah.
That's one scenario that I've had of how does Cody keep it? You have a replay sort of similar to last year where he gets saved. But this time he really does need it. Like
Yeah.
The Rock's got his bloodline, he's got Cena, he's got everyone possible to pin Cody into a corner, and you need basically the best of the best to get him out.
Yeah.
And that's when you have Roman realize, right, I've got to step up against the Rock here. Like, I don't have any other choice. The other side of the equation, where Cena wins it, I think you can just have him win it, plain and simple.
Yeah.
Don't have to do any
No
hokey
interference.
stuff.
Yeah.
Don't have to do that. But they did say, like I mentioned before earlier in the podcast, there are a lot of twists and turns to come before Mania. I think The Rock is counting down to someone else with the 3, 2, 1.
You believe the internet?
I think there is some. I think there's something to it. Now, I don't necessarily think it's going to be this person that I'm about to say, but I think it does make some sense with where storylines are currently heading. But I think there is a potential that Seth Rollins is the one that betrays Cody.
Oh, that would hurt like a mother.
Because I think when you look at the look at how Seth has slowly been degrading and descending into a bit of madness over Punk. You've then got the fact that he's got Punk next week in the cage. You've got how he got Punk out in the cage and did everything he possibly could to stop Punk getting that main event. You've then got his conversation with Cody of saying, don't make me regret this, don't do this, like, don't take the offer. I think there's a very interesting story there where basically he is stopped Cody from taking the offer to basically get himself into that place where he can then be the one that gets the offer from The Rock or benefits from Cody not being the guy, essentially.
Yeah.
You then link it in with the fact that he is going, if he is having a triple threat with Punk and Roman, you've obviously got all the history of Roman. If then Seth gets into bed with The Rock, you've then got all of his history with Roman. I know that recent history, it might not make sense, but like a year ago, if you look back to a year ago, it wouldn't make sense. But I just think with the slow descendants into getting closer and closer to bad guy territory, I think Seth is going to be seen as a heel no matter what. Going into that cage match and going into Mania, if it's Punk again or Roman or whoever, Seth is going to be the heel. I could easily see it being someone like Drew as well, by the way. I know I'm saying Seth, but I think that everyone kind of expects it to be Drew.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be disappointed if it was.
No.
But I was thinking about candidates who it could be, and I just think Seth has this extra dimension that if, for example, Cody does win, you then have Seth after, and that's sort of your main build to SummerSlam is with Seth. And then after that, you've got so much you can build off with Seth being the bad guy.
Yeah.
And again, what a dynamic that would be. Rock then teaming with Seth, who he was facing off against last year, but then is turned his head the Rock's way, and then you've got Cena and Seth's history, and now they're working together as bad guys. I would be really interested in seeing that. But I also think that you could do something really interesting where Cody is fighting Cena in the Mania main event, and then Seth comes down to make the save again 2 years in a row. He's gonna save his buddy, and he ends up betraying him.
Yeah.
And Cena gets the belt, and then you've got Cody's first program after Mania being chasing after Seth and saying, what the hell have you done? And then I think that would be excellent. And
I could see it as well. I think with me, I think the countdown does matter. I don't know whether it was intentional, but I think it matters, but in a very different sense. I don't think it's a countdown to people. I think it's a countdown of big moments. Because when he appeared, obviously it was 1, 2, 3, and that was weird. But then this one with the slit of the throat and it being 2 makes you then be like, okay, the 3 2. What's a symbol recently that's been really important with 1?
Mm-hmm. Oh well, we've talked about this over text with Roman.
I really think we're going to get the moment where no one sees the 1 coming. Obviously, you've had 3 and you've had 2, and then you're expecting 1 to be really obvious. I don't think it'll be obvious. I think there'll be a moment where you have The Rock standing side by side with Roman again, with the pointing of the wands up in the air, and that will be the moment. And that, it will be subtle like that, where no one realizes that's the number 1 of the 3-2-1. I don't think it's people. I think it's moments. Yeah. And I think it's that 3-2-1, the one's up in the air, then that's the turn on Roman. That's how you get to the Mania match for next year. I'm under the 100% belief that the match next year is Rock Roman. I think at the end of 40, people wanted Rock Roman for 41, but there wasn't that 100% certainty, because it was like, well, how do you get there? I'm almost confident that it will happen at 42, and that will be The Rock's last match, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But I just think the 3-2 and the 1, I think the 1's leading to the turn happening when he's standing side by side with Roman with the ones up in the air.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think, I don't think WWE are going to be able. I mean, I know they've already got the image, but the iconic Mania images that everyone has at the end of every Mania, there's an iconic image. Having the image of Cena with his 17th title with The Rock over his shoulder just be so good, or The Rock literally lifting up his hand and pointing at him, and them standing side by side with Cena holding up his 17th title while The Rock's pointing at him, sort of like Triple H style. I don't think they're going to. I don't think they're going to waste the chance of having that picture and that moment. It doesn't mean it won't happen, because they trick us at every bloody moment they possibly can at the moment. But I think he wins it.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm not. I wasn't saying I don't think he's going to win it for definite. I'm very much 50-50, because I still think there is that thing of, you want to send everyone, you want to end, it's like the end of, it's the big finale, isn't it? You want the good guy to come up trumps. You want him to come out on top. And I think the next 6 weeks is going to be a build where Cody is very much going to become the underdog. But, like you say, there is just as much, if not more so, of an argument for Cena to get that title then, and then have this monster run through the rest of the year.
Possibly even lasting past his retirement tour.
Yeah.
And it being the most heelish move is announcing a retirement tour and not retiring at the end of it, because you still want to be on top. It's such an interesting story that they could easily do.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, another theory in my head that I've had is, so one of two things happen. So you get to the end of the year, he's still the champion, he's still got the belt. He's going to leave the company with the belt, and he's not coming back. He's retiring. He's going to retire as champion, and he isn't dropping the belt. He's not going to do it. Who else can take him down other than the man who faced him in a very similar scenario many years ago in CM Punk? You go into that match expecting Punk to win because it's Cena's final match. Cena wins, runs over the barricade, blows the kiss, says goodbye, and comes back.
Oh, that's so good.
Right? But then you get to Royal Rumble. We've not seen or heard or anything about you've got the World Heavyweight Championship still going on. That's kind of carrying things for a few weeks. Cena's like, you know what? I feel like, I'm just gonna keep going until I drop the belt. When I lose, that's it. I'm done. Right? Royal Rumble happens. CM Punk finally wins the Royal Rumble, and he's like, Cena, I am coming for you but I'm also coming for your career. I'm retiring you. You're out. Gets to Mania, and again, you could have the role reversal. Everybody is in Cena's corner running to stop Punk winning this match. Punk somehow wins, gets the belt, runs off, goes to the barricade, blows the kiss. Goodbye, John Cena. Sayonara. And that be it. So, and again, of course, we all know I'm a massive CM Punk fan, so I'm obviously booking it in a way that I would like CM Punk to be the guy. Probably isn't going to end up being CM Punk, but I would just very much like it to be CM Punk. So, but I just think that imagery, and especially, I do like that thing at the end of December. He's retiring at the end of December. We know he's retiring. He's leaving the company. You are basically role reversing everything about that Money in the Bank pay-per-view, and you're going in with Cena being booed out the building like he was in Chicago all those years ago, and you've got Punk like the underdog here, like trying to get it back off him and keep it in the company in a weird switch reversal of Punk trying to be the guy to take the belt away from the company. Now is the guy that's got to keep it in there. I think that is like...
That's really tantalizing.
That's such a good opportunity for them to use. Yeah. Will they use it? No, because they'll probably think of something 10 times better. But that isn't the point. I'm a fan and I want to fantasy book. Let me do it. So, that being said, honestly, it's been a lot of fun talking about this. I cannot think of a period of 2 days between podcasts where I'd be desperate to get on here and talk about it. It's been so much fun, and it's only going to get better from here because the build is going to be insane between now and Mania. And with that being said, I think that's where we'll leave it for today. If you guys have watched to the end or you've watched any of the segments that we put up on YouTube, thank you very much. Don't forget to leave a like on the episode. Hit that subscribe button, hit the follow button, leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It makes a big difference and helps us push out the podcast to as many wrestling fans as possible. And yeah, with that being said, Bragster, have you got anything else you'd like to sign off with?
No. I mean, this is the podcast that kind of sums up this podcast. It's about loving wrestling.
Yeah.
Yes, wrestling has its low moments, but by God, is it much better when you speak about the high moments. And yeah, this has been one of the highest moments in wrestling. It's so good at the moment. And yeah, I just can't wait already to find out what happens this week. Bloody hell, there's Revolution this week.
I know.
It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
I've even thought of something else for the Punk thing. Survivor Series, Team Cena versus Team Punk. My God, man.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I'm good at this. Right, okay. So, right. We'll leave it there, folks. Sorry about that little sidebar there. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one where the build to WrestleMania begins.